This is episode number 5 of Dev Branch. Does Google think your WordPress site is slow? Brought to you by our friends over at ServerPress. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. And The Query, our new show on WPwatercooler Network, hosted by our own Jason Cosper. Ask him a question
Jason Tucker,
at The Query.
Find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog.
I'm Steve Zank. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
I'm Sadie Reed. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, speak WordPress at Sadie Reed Media on all the things.
My name is Russell Aaron. I do things with WordPress in Las Vegas.
It's Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg.
Help us out over on Patreon. Go to WP Watercooler's Patreon page at patreon.com/WPwatercooler. And subscribe to this content on YouTube and ring the bell. We'd appreciate it. We're going to be talking about website performance, speed performances, dealing with front end and back end performance, and just kind of all of those pieces there. Woo! All right, so let's talk a little bit about that. As always, whenever we're talking about this sort of stuff, we have Cosper, who is he's great at site performance and dealing with server stuff and making sure that all of those things are working well. And then
I'm all right.
Jacob takes care of all of front end web development stuff, and so it's like between those two folks, we bring in the best of the best to make it all happen.
Say does some stuff, I do some stuff. Come on, yo.
And I'm just the eye candy.
I mean, that's true.
That's very true. That's very true.
So let's talk a little bit about, does Google think your website is slow? And I think if you were to run your website,
it's rhetorical. Rhetorical.
Yeah, if you were to run your website through that, how would it be slow? And most of the time, it is slow, and it's also really bad, right?
Let's start by talking about the that you're running it through, because you said if you're running it through that. Sure. So there are several metrics tools that you can use to measure your website.
That is there,
right? Yeah. That can be a couple of different things, right? We use Google PageSpeed, Google PageSpeed Insights. We use Web.dev. We use GTmetrix. And then built right into your browser, into Chrome at least, there's a Lighthouse measuring tool in the dev tools. So, anybody else use any other measuring sticks for?
I can't talk about that as this is a family show. However,
it's not a family show at this point, bro. You have at it.
Right.
This was getting a couple
mine are all negative numbers. Am I doing something wrong? All right.
No, so Lighthouse is also available for Firefox now.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that is something that if you're not all tied up in the Google ecosystem, and I know that plenty of people are using Chrome nowadays, it's the dominant browser. But as someone who uses Firefox, I appreciate having that available. I like using Web Page Test at webpagetest.org. They have a ton of different metrics. They run Lighthouse tests. People tend to lean on GTmetrix, which uses some outdated stuff like YSlow in their measurements. YSlow is a tool that's been abandoned for several years now, but they're still touting it, and people are still using those metrics as something that they should do to optimize their site. And
YSlow, by the way, is still the best name out of all these measuring tools.
Absolutely.
I mean,
there's also a way to
what
automate it. So, as part of your continuing integration, every time you do a deploy, you can trigger a Lighthouse test as well.
I mean, there's also things to think about too, like the technology itself is abandoned, but I mean, it's still good recommendations when it says use a CDN, don't forget to expire headers. I mean, it's still good advice. It's just, not the thing that you should be benchmarking against.
All right.
That's it. Dang, 6 minutes.
That's the show.
So what things are what things are these tools? complaining about? Like, what is it that is it because the images are too big?
Oh,
is it
man,
because we installed every plugin that has every version of
Yes.
jQuery installed?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Google suddenly hates every image
So-
version except for the one that's like the brand new one. What is it?
WebP.
WebP. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
WebP.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah, WebP.
Now literally nothing exists except that. Thanks. Cool.
Preview on the Mac doesn't even open WebP. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing?
Every conversation we had about GIF is just gone now. GIF no longer matters. It doesn't matter the name. It's all about WebP now.
So Jason, those
Or is
those
it
reports,
because that's what
those reports can be daunting. They can be confusing. They can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information in those reports, and some of it's relevant, some of it's not. But you know, it is important to understand what those things are.
So
I think
when you're looking,
Jacob,
when you're,
I think
go
too,
ahead,
like
Jacob.
the thing to point out is, you know, as soon as March or June, the new Web Vitals metric was introduced by Google. If you're not sure what that is, that pretty much is the way that Google kind of changed the way that they measure performance in determining whether, you know, your site is fast or slow. But you can think about it in three different ways, like how long does it take your site, your page to load, how easy it is to interact, and how much does it really move around. So those are measured by things called largest contentful paint. That's a buzzword. So largest contentful paint pretty much measures how long does it take, you know, for the biggest thing in the viewport to render on the page. And that could be something like an image, a video, an iframe, a text node like an H1 or something like that.
Those tend to load forever, those H1s. Just kidding.
Yeah, and
sorry.
Especially if they're styled. If they're styled, just get out of here.
Sorry.
The thing about the thing about largest contentful paint is like a really common, you know, design pattern in the last few years has been that typical hero, right? At the top of a page, we've got a big background image. And what we've noticed is a lot of our clients is that's, you know, becoming an impact to the largest contentful paint. So as soon as that happened, a lot of our clients came back to us like, hey, all of a sudden my Lighthouse performance was in the 80s. Now it's in the 60s. Like, what happened overnight? And, you know, more often than not,
Took a time machine, bro.
And if you have clients that are complaining about this happened across the board to everybody. So Google turned on this metric right at the end of May, early June. And so most websites just got dinged immediately once this metric was turned on for doing nothing, making no changes.
I had a friend who was doing like they had some business model that was based off of I didn't even follow the whole thing, but they literally were like, well, Google just took that entire business model away and they closed the business. They were just like launching it, and then they were like, just kidding. Google destroyed that.
Well,
it's pretty great. Google has power. A little bit of power.
Jacob pointed out to me right at that same time, New York Times actually changed their design in response to that by taking their articles and moving the feature image below the fold. So that largest contentful paint only judges what's above the fold on the first scroll.
In the
So
viewport,
what they did is in the viewport. So they took their feature image, which was at the top, and just moved it down the page to get around that LCP score.
I've had that conversation. I'm working with 3 clients on new sites that they're going to be doing, and I'm saying they're like, oh, we want the big image, and I was like, well, actually, you don't anymore, and you're going to be ahead of the curve because in about a year or two, you're going to see the design shift. Like you're going to see Google leading this design shift away from that. And it won't happen right away because there's a trickle down effect where it takes a while to get to people. But we're going to start to see that across the board where the design is going to change and it's no longer going to be that big thing. That's also not accessible in a lot of cases, like the big thing with the text and the opaque or the opacity.
Yeah.
So it's basically going away. I'm excited to see what the next design thing led by Google's
AMP
decisions is.
We're just heading everything's going to be AMP.
No.
I think too, like you know the single post page. I think it's just been the de facto where you've got the featured image and then title and
you're just used to
content.
it,
And I think designers and developers were both at fault for just defaulting to that when we're building things, right? And like if we start to think about
designers. especially.
Yeah, if we start to think about like what's the value proposition of that featured image being at the top, like, I mean, does it really offer that much? Can we just put it at the
Some
bottom?
pictures are worth 1,000 words,
I mean, that's the Instagram of the web. You know what I mean? It's like following that Instagram first. Like we
That
put all
model,
the
yeah.
images. Yeah, like even on Instagram, we put all the text in images.
It's very interesting that you say that because Facebook does the opposite. It goes text whatever, and then it puts your media below. That's very interesting. That same company, but they offer two different ways on different platforms. It's very interesting, say. Isn't that what Twitter does too? Twitter loads the content and then media and everything below. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So LCP has been a big conversation internally, making our client sites faster. But the other metric is the first input delay metric on Web Vitals. And that measures how long does it take for my site or my application to become interactive, meaning my site's there and I'm pressing a button, but will the site respond to that button click, add to cart, whatever. So that's
you mean like click, 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 click,
Yeah.
click, click, click. Will it respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
And so it's important because
Interesting.
as a user, that's frustrating. You see a button there, you want to click on it, you want to press on it, and nothing's happening. You'll get frustrated. So that's the other metric that impacts your score as well as that first input delay.
Stuff like that comes in. I immediately think of style and Z indexing, and something's below something, and you have a div over top, or maybe there's but there's also maybe the asset, that JavaScript that controls that isn't loaded yet. So there's other facets too. It's not just is the button missing or can I see it? It's everything it takes to make that button work. That's got to load quickly, and that's one of the biggest things that I can't stress enough when we talk about page speed. Is cache is great. Cache is just throwing up this blanket really quick, kind of like throwing up a poster, but you want your server on the back end to be caching objects, so queries and stuff like that. You want it to be doing that, but those two don't mean anything if you're loading 10,000 JavaScript files on the head, or you're loading 19 different CSS styles. And so these plugins like WP Rock and stuff, they're wonderful, but they're not a one-stop solution because they can't determine should this script be loading on this page, should this script not be loading on this page. So when we talk about optimization and speed and why these scores matter, it's because you might be running the latest, greatest, best version of, but you're still missing this thing because you're still loading this Dashicon style sheet that doesn't mean anything, or you're still loading this JavaScript that's only used on your about page. And these tools can help you identify stuff like this. And this is a common thing that we see in the WordPress community when it comes to support, which is, how do I speed up my site? Why is this taking forever? And what are we going to do to fix it? And all the articles in the world can't point out more than enough.
Steve knows.
There's a lot of things here.
I know what we're going to do to fix it, but I
Go
don't
ahead,
think we're there
Wikipedia.
So first we get a WAPU, and then we no, just kidding. Sorry.
I think too, bringing this back into WordPress, sometimes you don't have control of these assets coming in, right? So if you have a plugin or a series of plugins that bring in their own
analytics
or JavaScript or icon library, maybe they're bringing in, maybe they're bringing in Font Awesome or whatever.
CDN.
So you can do everything you can, but again, you're limited. Go ahead.
I was going to say that there's been a lot of talk. No, it's no problem. There's been a lot of talk around how developers are going to kind of keep their foothold in a post-Gutenberg world where people can kind of construct their own sites conveniently. I think that site optimization and helping people understand how to optimize their site is a good avenue for people to start exploring if they want to still have the site builders who basically will take a theme and throw it together, who aren't as deeply technical as some developers are. It might be a good idea to start looking into optimizing and learning site performance standards to kind of secure your paycheck a little bit.
And if Divi keeps, having vulnerabilities all the time, like you're not gonna be using Divi anymore. You might be using Gutenberg with the way that things might be going. So understanding how WordPress core and Gutenberg works and speeding that up can really help doing things like Elementor and things down the road.
So
that's very interesting that you bring that up,
still love
Cosper.
Divi.
That like you can offer this service now. Speed optimization is the thing you could always offer, but you could just have an optimization shop, and that's all that you do. That's very interesting.
So one of the things that a page builder
Op shop. I'm going to call it op shop.
One of the things that a page builder introduces, no matter what page builder you're using, Divi, Elementor, Beaver Builder, it doesn't matter. All those page builders introduce page density, right? And an increase in page density. So the amount of HTML that the page builders create does have an impact on your page speed score, right? And so one of the things that we do is a lot of those sites we're kind of moving away from page builders by using much slimmer frameworks like Tailwind CSS. We're purging the CSS to make sure that the CSS is as small as possible, and all those things are important because we mentioned third-party scripts. The third-party scripts and external CSS, those all affect that page speed score.
When you're looking on GT metrics and it shows you like your page speed and it says 1.8, and then it shows you the size of the page and it says like 350 kilobytes, and then it says requests and it says 80, that's like you're requesting 80 different things of JavaScript, CSS, GIF, whatever it is, all these images.
A sandwich.
That's sandwich, corn dog, whatever. Your ketchup napkins are over there. Anyways, you're asking all these things to load, and I think what Steve is saying is, by default, you load these page builders. You've got 15 just out of the box, and it's your job to look at those. And is this effectively what we want to do, or is this leaving a big footprint?
So there's a way to resolve this stuff, and one of the ways to sorry, my audio just cut out. One of the ways to, or one of the other things to think about, because we mentioned third-party scripts, we mentioned plugins, and the kind of third-party scripts that those add. One of the other, I'm going to call it dangerous tools that you can add to your website is Google Tag Manager, right? So Google Tag Manager.
Love Tag Manager.
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not, and I'll tell you why. Right,
okay.
Google Tag Manager is the purpose of it is to sort of standardize your tags, have all your tags in one place, make it easy to add and edit tags that are on your website. The problem with it is Google Tag Manager in the hands of somebody who does not understand what those tags mean can be very dangerous and very have a serious impact on your page speed score. So if you're adding Google Tag Manager and your client is adding the tags themselves, that's problematic. And what we find is when we're inheriting slow sites, one of the first places we look is Google Tag Manager. And typically we'll find, 20, 30, 50, 100 tags that have been added in Google Tag Manager and not maintained. Right.
So they're just firing on page because they met some kind of thing and it's not even being used properly. Okay.
A lot of times
Google Tag Manager is just like the keyword stuffing of now. Like, what is even like? I've not seen it used properly.
We use Tag Manager at the Plaza. So what we do is we have a CMS that all of our emails and stuff. So like when something loads, that's how we're handling cookies and that's how we're handling tracking and Tag Manager. AdSense. That's how we get like all that kind of stuff. But we also take data from there, and that's how we're using Tag Manager to send analytic data to track e-commerce sales. Like, we can look in there, and I have a lot of different scripts that are running to collect JavaScript variables and do things like that. So it is effective, but like Steve's saying, if you have one variable that's wrong on that, it slows down the entire site.
The difference, Russ, is what you're doing, right?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. But I've been on video, but kind of.
But you do know what you're doing, and so what we find is a lot of times people will just add a whole bunch of tags in Tag Manager, right?
Agreed.
Replace them with something else like an ad tag. Maybe they'll put one ad network in there. Now they're going to replace it with a different ad network. Or maybe they're putting in a different tracking script or a different lead form or something else, and they don't remove the old tags when they're not using them anymore.
That's the worst. Or when you like migrate, like, hey, we're using, MailChimp, and now we're going to go to this other thing. And now, did I get all the scripts off of here? Like that whole process of migration just in Tag Manager alone sucks. And like Steve was saying, if you're not using it right, you can embed it all you want, but it's slowing down that first, time to first byte. It's impacting that first thing that Jacob was saying. I mean, like everything.
Last content full page.
Yeah, everything here kind of goes together, and this all comes back to when you're loading a page on your site, you want the minimum stuff required.
I have a question about that last content. Largest content
LCP,
which really sounds like largest content full pane. I don't know if anyone else hears that every time.
It is
That's
a
what I hear.
Oh, it's a pain.
So if you're loading background images, any tips on like lazy loading those, or like you can't really lazy load those, but what's the like? How can you make?
No effect. Lazy load has no effect on LCP.
Yeah,
I know. Well, I mean, it's not on the screen, so
even if you lazy load, you still you cannot affect that LCP.
It's not on the screen, so it doesn't matter. But it's right, like you're not scrolling to it, so it's not counted in that metric.
If the image is in the viewport, you can't lazy load that. So that's not going to help.
I'm saying, is there some form of that for background images? Someone let Jacob talk. I'm asking Jacob.
Go, Jacob, go.
So, are you asking? Can you lazy load a background image? Is that what you're asking?
Well, not lazy load.
No.
I'm lazy load-esque. Like, is there a way to like still have background images that would basically not impact that so negatively?
Deprioritize or something.
What we found, what we noticed, we didn't find any solutions for that. So on the Zeek homepage, we had the typical hero background image with text overlaid with the tagline, right? Very common. And so the solution that we came up with was to use a base 64 inline SVG pattern, right? A really small one, and just repeat it, right?
So you're only loading a tiny little pixel.
Yep. And because it's base 64, the browser paints it itself. It doesn't make an HTTP request out to a CDN or something like that, right?
Oh, wow.
So that instead of a background image, which is secondary, right? The main like focus of that element is the copy. So the background image is secondary. So we just replaced I think we had Steve, right? Like some kind of like a mobile device with someone writing something or something like that.
Something useless.
Yeah. Once that, I'll tell you the reason we did it is once that LCP score was introduced, right? The Zeek site, which we were in the 90s, went down to the 70s. Like we took a 20-point hit just for having a background image.
Not the 1990s, to clarify.
No.
Even though it kind of feels like it. Okay, so your solution was no background image, tiny little pixel loading. But what if the design, like, what if you really can't get away from it? Like, this is like, you're really like,
I have this on.
It's not just going to fly to have just text.
I have this on my homepage now, and so I'm using Gutenberg, and I'm using the cover, and I'm using WP Rocket to handle that, and I have a good web host to help me with that, and it converts to WebP. I mean, I think you have to do all of those. That's the new minimum. Like seriously, you have to optimize if you need an image in it, you have to optimize the delivery of it, or else you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, if there's no getting around to it, say with the designer and maybe internally with the client you're interacting with, that it has to be that way. You have to kind of go.
Even that, I'm looking at my largest contentful paint, and I have 3.5. I have a score of 91, and all my stuff looks good, but that image right there is affecting that. So I might have to go to a small 25 by 25 base 64 code. Thanks for the tip.
the other metric I want to make sure we talk about is the layout shifting. It's called CLS.
Cumulative layout shift. Yeah.
Thank you, Casper. Yeah. So
I have a 0.
So what that measures is, unexpected layout shift. And actually, even though it has nothing to do with like how long an image takes to download or your JavaScript, that actually impacts your performance score. And what that means is, it could be anything like a flash of unstyled content, meaning, you ever go to a page and sometimes it's just like pure raw HTML and then the CSS kicks in, right? The page is moving. Or if you have ads, right? Maybe the page downloads first and then all of a sudden an ad comes in and, shifts the page.
Interesting.
And so those things, even though they may not seem like they have performance implications, Google uses that to measure your site's performance.
Is that different than like a CSS animation, or is this saying that? Okay.
That means the page has unexpectedly shifted, right? And
what we expect the page to do is this, and there's another thing before or after, is what you're saying.
After, right?
Okay.
Think about it
Like
as you're reading.
to make it bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, so like an ad came in. You're reading a post, and all of a sudden an ad came in, and like, wait, where was I? In reading that. Or images is a really important thing, because if you don't provide image dimensions, meaning width and height attributes to an image, the browser has no way to know what aspect ratio it needs to calculate while it's painting the browser. So it's kind of going to be empty. And then once the image comes in, even if it's lazy loaded, it's like, oh, this is supposed to be like a 16:9 ratio. Let me plop it in here. So if you don't provide width and height attributes, you're going to get dinged on your CLS, which is going to ding you on your performance as well. So CLS is an important thing to take a look at, even though you may not think that it has, performance implications. It absolutely does.
Wow.
And really, like you said, Jacob, one of the easiest things you can do there is making sure that your images have a width and height element to them. That is because I don't know about anybody else, but when you're on your phone, when you're just browsing the web and you're reading an article and something lazy loads, something drops in as you're reading the article, and you start reading a sentence, and then all of a sudden the whole article shifts down because they decided to drop an image in there. It sucks.
Or a video or something. Yeah, man.
Right.
It's awful.
And Google realizes that sucks, and they're not wrong. And so actually having that in place, that's a really easy fix to take care of that. So you don't have your customers do that, and you won't get impacted by.
Totally.
Yeah.
Was that the answer to my question?
The layout shift?
Yeah. No, about the background image.
Background image. I mean, the short answer was if you have to have
5 minutes ago, I missed it.
If you have to have it, use WebP. Use a really small image.
Try to use a smaller image and optimize.
Jason,
and even then it doesn't work.
Jason, maybe we should answer those questions next week.
I think we should.
Or on the next dev branch.
Yeah, next month.
6.
I think we should, and I think one of the things that we really need to look at is the fact that plugins come with all this stuff built in, and you have to deal with the repercussions of the things that are built into the plugin. And how do you manage that? And if you're not somebody who's skilled enough to be able to do this, how do you approach it? And even if you are skilled, you still have to worry about
Steve
updating plugins and stuff.
How do you keep adding plugins to solve the problem when plugins are adding more problems? more problem.
I think you should tune in next week to find out.
You approach it like Steve Irwin. You're like, there's a plugin. I gotta sneak up very quickly on this plugin and get it. That's how you tackle it.
Hey, well, here's our outro. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. Talk to y'all.
Yourself.
No, it's gonna be fine. Look, and all it's playing is just the video. Look, see. So go check us out over at WPwatercooler.com.
You can download us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. You can definitely go do that.
Hey, you should follow us on Pantheon.
Hey, look, I went the easy way here, and I wanted to make sure we weren't going to be playing some crazy music. Talk to y'all later.
That's some slow water.
Love you guys. Bye.